All right, for the breakdown, we got some cool sweeps and we got nice armbar submissions. Let's go into it. All right, so we got a big boy match featuring the glorious crack. You guys will know what I mean, or maybe the big boys will know. Maybe they'll already know what I'm talking about. So in Jiu-Jitsu, often people hear that Smitty dislikes stalling. But there's one time when I say stalling is warranted, and I believe it's the wrestling game. I believe you got to find out how strong your opponent is. You need to find out just what do they have in their arsenal. This is if you're comfortable with doing the stand-up game. Or you could just pull guard. I know people hate pulling guard, but I'm not totally against it. But let's get into it. So now we're starting to get some actual grips. You see that our opponent is trying to sprawl on top of his head, which is a good idea. And of course, now you're about to see the glorious crack come out real soon. There it is. Look at it. But here we go. This is when it gets really good. Now I can go into the full breakdown. So we have Mr. Fro here with the underhooks. And I was wondering what in the world was he going to do with this, because he just seemed so comfortable being in this position. And he does this nice little judo trip. Now, the way he's able to get this trip is he's standing very upright and narrow. And that allows for his right leg to sweep and hook under his opponent. And he falls down into half guard. A cool tip is you can typically expect the style that you're dealing with based on their stance. They're upright like that, you got some judo trips and throws that's about to come. If they're crouched down in a wrestler stance, they're probably going to shoot for you. So that's a big FYI. You can kind of tell what you're going to deal with based on someone's stance. So my advice is once it hits the ground, just take a moment, like a breather, to look around at what's going on. Maybe your opponent has a game that they might be going for, and just get prepared to counter it, which is Mr. Fro does here, but then he realizes his opponent doesn't have anything and easily passes his guard into what's known as side control. And then the battle becomes settling in the position, which is now known as a pin. Understand that the guard means legs. That's all the guard is. It's just their legs. When you pass their legs like Mr. Fro did, now you're entering into the end game, which is what I call it, which is basically the pin system. And that is when all the major attacks can be done. So let's see what Mr. Fro does with his pin, which is called side control. So I call the pin system the end game because for some people, this is where it ends. They just want to win by points. But you won't get famous for this. You need to advance your position like Mr. Fro is doing to a knee on belly. And then you're going to see Mr. Fro gets to mount. He is still technically in the pin system, but Mr. Fro obviously has something in mind. He wants to get the finish. You have to get the finish. Jiu-Jitsu is a finishing art. And you're going to see here, our opponent does, I believe, his first mistake. He extends his arm out, giving Mr. Fro what I believe the idea of the armbar he's later going to get. Now, I do understand a natural reaction when someone's on top of you is to try to stick your arm out and bench press them off. But please understand, if you're going against a jiu-jitsu athlete, that's a big no-no. Now, there's another concept I want to talk about. We see Mr. Fro is trying to set something up. Now, understand when you're on mount, trying to set something up, this typically happens. They'll buck you off, and you have to have the confidence of being able to go from side control and mount. It's a thing that you have to have. That's a skill set you must have. Now, Mr. Fro goes easily back to mount, and then he takes the chance. Boom, he shoots the gun, and now he's in spiderweb position going for an armbar. And let's look at it in slow-mo. Look at that. He just jumped right into it. That means he just fired the trigger. And what I mean by fired the trigger is that's a speed-based attack instead of a methodical, slow, controlled method, which rewarded him into the finish, which is going to happen right now. You got to take risk, if you want to get rewarded. Now, where did the bottom guy mess up? Look at his knees. He didn't stack his left leg up, and he just tumbled right over. Probably didn't have his hands together, and he got armbarred. Probably got his elbow popped, and then he had to cover up his glorious crack. I'm not really clowning him. I actually am very impressed with how his his shorts didn't fall down. But yeah, there you go. Hope you guys learned some lessons and come back for more. This is Spiderweb X, narrated by Smitty'Wit. And always good sportsmanship. Look at that.